Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here representing Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and today I want to chat with you guys and gals a little bit about why using Ronnie Coleman as an example of why people shouldn't lift heavy is absurd. But a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, be greatly appreciated. If you're not subscribed or following, please do so. And if you'll be kind enough to drop me a comment down below, I'd appreciate it so much. All right, let's get over and think about this for a minute. People always use this because Ronnie Coleman is so crippled and beat up, from his training and everything. And they're like, oh, he lifted heavy, that's the reason. And I want people to think about how ludicrous that is for a moment. Because they have this impression that most people with a frame his size and his bone structure, like he exceeded the ability of his bone structure and ligaments and everything to handle what he did, had all these back injuries and stuff. There are plenty of people who are stronger than Ronnie Coleman who don't have these problems. Well, I'm not saying plenty, not saying it's common, but definitely in the strength world. I mean, does anyone really think Ronnie Coleman had the biggest squats or deadlifts? Not by a long shot. Okay? Not by a long shot. I mean, especially the squatting. He was wearing wraps and a multiply suit. There are guys who squatted 400 or 500 pounds more than him wearing that same equipment who don't have back problems. But I digress. Think about this for a moment. So anyone who's ever seen Ronnie train, I had the pleasure of seeing Ronnie train in person once when he was actually a pro bodybuilder still. Crazy work ethic, really bad form with really heavy weights. So here's kind of almost the point I would make. If you want to talk about injuries, it should be, how about we don't lift with bad form? I mean, does that make sense? Not don't lift heavy. How about we just don't lift with bad form? That should really and truly be what it is. Look what happened to Ronnie Coleman using bad form. But the thing is to think about the weights that he moved. I want people to stop and think about that. All right, first of all, with no drugs, would Ronnie Coleman have ever built enough muscle to lift the weight that he lifted? No, nowhere near. Yeah, he was freakishly strong genetically. He had said that even before using stuff. He had big numbers. He was genetically very strong. Okay, he gained strength easy. All right, fine. But the weights he was using was due to the ability to do so. So in other words, had he not used ludicrous amounts of anabolic drugs, would he have been moving anywhere near those weights? No. Okay. Right? Of course not. Anyone look at his form and stuff, and let's even talk about, the squats and stuff. I mean, realistically, raw, does anyone think he would have had that much weight on his back without wearing a multiply suit and wraps and all this stuff? Like if he just threw on a belt, walked in there in a pair of shorts, a belt, and a tank top. Like you guys saw me do that in this video with 500 pounds at age 48. Yeah, 500, pretty decent. But does anyone really think he would have been moving 800 pounds without all that gear on? He'd definitely be stronger than me. I'm not saying he wouldn't. Even probably without drugs. Natural Ronnie probably out squat me. Let's be realistic here. I'm not going to claim otherwise, but I don't get hurt doing that. I'm 48. You had to watch me deadlift 600, squat 500, stuff like that at different points. Do I get hurt doing it? No. Even in my late 40s, come on. But think about this for a moment. The drugs allowed him, because again, muscle mass equals higher strength ceiling. So if you've taken enough anabolic drugs to gain 50, 60, 70 pounds of muscle, because isn't that probably about what he probably gained 70 pounds of muscle while using stuff. And I'm not saying he wasn't big and jacked naturally. I want to be clear. He obviously was. Again, the guy was very genetically gifted and trained really, really hard. Of course, he was probably big. Natural. Common sense here, Buell. But the drugs gave him the ability to move those weights. So what sort of weights did he move and how bad was the form? Anyone watch any of his rowing? He would do 600-pound T-bar rows while cheating. Cheat reps, cheat rows, same thing. You see him strap up and put 6 plates aside. That's 585 pounds onto a barbell and do cheat rows with bad form for like sets of 10 to 12 reps. All right, the average, that's the same way you just saw me deadlifting earlier in this video. He's doing sets of 10 to 12 on cheat rows strapped up. Okay? Cheat rows, though, think about how much stress. How much stress does that put on the body? Okay? That's a lot. It's a lot of stress on the body. You got to look at that and go, okay. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And yet he did it. That would probably injured him. That's probably where your overuse occurred. And it was just the bad form. Insanely heavy weights due to using insane amounts of drugs with an insane genetic propensity. Moving monstrous weights with horrific, scary bad form. Crippled him. Okay? The lesson here should not be, oh, don't lift heavy weights. Heavy weights will get you. Plenty of people lift elite numbers for decades with no injuries. Okay? Overuse is the biggest cause, but this other stuff contributes to overuse. So maybe the solution should be, hey, maybe don't use really, really bad form in ego lift. That could be the lesson. Or maybe don't use insane amounts of anabolic drugs. It could mess you up. There could be not only health consequences, but injuries and tears and damage to your body. It's because of the weights you're moving. Especially the propensity to ego lift due to all the drugs hitting your brain. Right? The psychological effects. So your lesson should be maybe don't abuse insane amounts of anabolic drugs and don't ego lift and use really bad form to move really heavy weight. That should be the lesson, not don't lift heavy. It's absolutely not the correct take home from any of this.